this is the wrap. We're going to close with this session, a session that is a dream come true for me. As you all know, I'm a newcomer into the Hispanic agenda, and I've seen firsthand how incredible efforts are happening. One of them are led by these two incredible leaders, Eva Longoria and Henry Muñoz. Thank you so much for being here. This is the Hispanic Leadership Summit. I wish we could be together at the United Nations, but here we are digitally connecting with even more people, even more Hispanic leaders that want to see a breakthrough for our community. And for that, I would like to ask you, if you don't mind, you do so much with Momento Latino and Edel. I really can't keep up. So tell me about the things that you're doing, and what do you think are most proud on the work that you have started, seeing fruition come true. I'm going to start with you, Eva, if you don't mind.
Oh, I was going to say start with Henry.
We'll start with Henry then. Let's start with
I was proud that I got to meet Eva Longoria many years ago. And I feel like because of that fate, that I've had an opportunity to work in unity with her to help change the direction of the country. Just yesterday, the United States Senate voted to the full floor of the Senate a piece of legislation to create a National Latino Museum on the Mall in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. Both of us sat on that commission. Years ago, we decided together through many conversations with people across the country that there weren't enough of us serving in elected office, public servants. So we decided to start an organization called Latino Victory. And today there are over 100 elected officials of every level of government who represent us, who look like us, who share our values. And in the midst of COVID-19, the two of us decided to found Momento Latino, which is, I think, a historic coalition of over 130 organizations across the country, some national, some regional, to help our community move from crisis to recovery. So I'm very proud of the work that we've done together, and the fact that we've decided that when we are united, when we lift our voice, we're an unstoppable force.
Yeah. Well, I always just tag along to whatever Henry does. He's the brilliant mind, and I show up and I am the cheerleader. But I remember, being on the Latino Museum Commission and traveling the country, and we basically did a listening tour of not only what should belong in this museum, but what it represented, seeing Latinos as heroes in the United States. We've been here for a very long time. And so the work we did hopefully is coming to fruition very soon on the Latino Museum. And then we founded Latino Victory Project because, government should look like its constituents. Latinos are the fastest growing demographic in the United States, and we're severely underrepresented in public service. And a large part of that too is it's expensive. It's expensive to run for office. And so Latino Victory wanted to somehow help make sure we dedicate our attention and our fundraising arm to any candidate from our community who wishes to serve in a public capacity. And then, of course, Momento Latino today, which is a beautiful coalition of leaders and artists and allies just lifting up our voices during a pandemic, which we over-index as frontline essential workers. We're 18% of the population, but we're 34% of essential workers, which is your nurses, your healthcare workers, your restaurant workers, your delivery drivers, your farm workers. So we really wanted to create a moment and create a systemic change for the Latinx communities in the areas of health and education and economic recovery. And of course, during this election year, for civic engagement. So there's a lot to be done. You need the air war, you need the ground war, and the only way we're gonna get it all done is by coming together.
That's right. And I would love to, that's right, really. I think that unity is the key, like whatever data piece you look at it, like it is just about all of us understanding that all of us together are strong, and fragmented, we're not. Mm-hmm. And it's as simple as getting that message across, mm-hmm. that united we have to be. And tell me just a little bit more, because COVID is not over. I mean, like it is far from over, and the impact of COVID has not only been at the health level, and then at the mental health level, and then at the economic level. We had ourselves, we don't like a campaign to be launched at the White Sox Stadium, the Hispanic Star. We were gonna do all this shebang, and then COVID arrived, and we just had to put the campaign in hold and just put the Hispanic Star assets in action, and started creating a distribution of relief campaign through volunteers. The Hispanic Star hosts in 30 cities, distributing goods for more than 350,000 people. We had no idea we could do that. We had no idea that Hispanics were so ready to support each other and to be there. Tell me about what you think. Tell me about what you saw during this year with Momento Latino, about that, about the work that you did with recovery. What made you proud, and what do you think we can do together now, knowing that COVID is not going to go anytime soon, particularly since the vaccine is going to take at least a full year to come to all of us.
Well, I'll never forget the day in March when I picked up the phone and called Eva. I had been taken to the epicenter of the virus at the time in New Rochelle, New York. They drove me up in a car, and there was a National Guard, and then you went to the state police, and then you went to the local police, and then you finally got to this very intimidating tent city. You would get the test if you had made it through a screening process. And I knew in that moment that if you had a citizenship issue, if you were intimidated by medicine, in other words, if you are our community who are the hardest to reach and who never have access to quality healthcare, then you probably would not get tested for COVID. So we started to try and change that dynamic, make testing sites more convenient. Many people where I live in New York don't even have cars. And so I picked up the phone, I called her, I said, we have to do something. What we decided to do was not just another television special. We did research and collected data. And we found that in 3 significant areas that have always impacted our community, in healthcare and the virus, in jobs and the economy, in education and the lack of access to broadband or computers, our community was going to continue to suffer, and it wouldn't go away with the vaccination. So Momento Latino was an effort to create unity amongst coalition groups, to lift our voices to policymakers, to create recognition for who we are, for our strength, but also to create content, to share information, to create an infrastructure of opportunity for our people, because in those 3 areas, this crisis is not going to go away for quite some time.
I remember that day when Henry called me. He actually FaceTimed me and showed me the tents and showed me just how hard it was and how intimidating it was back in March to get tested. And we thought, oh my gosh. And when COVID hit, COVID didn't cause these disparities in our community. They exacerbated them. So they just brought to the forefront how we don't have equal access to quality healthcare. We don't have equal access to a good education. We don't have equal access to the capital and funds and resources to keep your small business running. And so we thought, okay, we're going to have to figure out how to help people survive this and then also thrive beyond COVID. And so, Momento Latino is, again, it's a coalition of so many people who have very diverse backgrounds, who are servicing the communities where they're at. As you know, Latinos are not a monolithic group. So, the problems that are in Florida are very different than the problems in Texas, and the problems in California are very different than the problems in New York. And so we have to make sure that, after we get out of this pandemic, we address those disparities. Why are there so many inequalities when it comes to communities of color? And so, that's something that we want to start setting up very, very quickly. And it's interesting because the Georgia runoffs are happening now, and Reverend Warnock, who's running for one of the Senate seats, he says, anytime a candidate doesn't have a vision, their strategy is division. So you have to be wary of people trying to separate Black and brown communities, people trying to separate, Republican, Democrat. We're all Americans. We're all patriots at the end of the day. At the end of the day, we all want our rights protected, our voices heard, and our families safe. That's a unifying message, and it's a unifying goal that we could all get behind.
Absolutely. And what if there's one thing that was clear to me is that COVID was disproportionately affected Hispanics and people of color, but also that we're disproportionately equipped to come out. We're so resilient. We're so like the data 100% indicates that we were the mortality rate, the highest mortality rates, but also the fastest coming back. That recovery that we have, that muscle that we have of resilience, of actually taking it further, will allow us probably to come to that shining, to that progress that you're talking about later, like faster. And yet, for example, public health is one of the areas, public health information is one of the areas that we could be addressing next year, knowing that COVID is here to stay for a little longer, that we will have to actually understand issues, and that we're not getting information in language or on time as quickly as possible, and that for a lot of Latinos, the lack of information about what to do and where to take and whether they are scared or not has resulted in a drop in vaccination by 40% in our community. And that's really hard. It's not only about the vaccine of COVID, it's vaccines in general that we need to be addressing. So I am looking forward to working with you and with Momento Latino. I'm proud to be part of your 130 organizations, not only World Human, but the Hispanic Star, and with us a number of other people, that we should just join forces and be singing from the same song sheet and addressing the key areas that will be transformational for our community. I wanna like just add one thing, if you don't mind, that Henry, you've been a leader in this community forever, and you've been, like bringing not probably Eva Longoria, but a number of us along. Whenever you do things, people follow, and you've seen this community for many decades. What's different? Why? How do you actually talk to someone that is cynical about the time is now for Latinos? Why should we be optimistic about the time is now for us?
So I agree. I think we're a very resilient people. I was raised by two civil rights activists and labor leaders in South Texas, not that far from where Eva Longoria grew up. And at the time, economic development was represented by $1.25 minimum wage. But my father taught me that the movement of a people begins with the steps of just one person. And so I've spent my life working to bring about institutional change. There isn't a museum. We need to create a museum. There isn't representation in libraries and archives that tell our stories. We need to fix that. It's just that you have to be patient because change doesn't happen overnight. But if we stick together, if we're united, of course we can do it. I think that it's absolutely no surprise that after the last 4 years with a president of the United States, quite honestly, who has told us that we don't belong here, we're not Americans, we're less than, that people would feel intimidated. But we have risen above that, and we can rise above that now, I think, and take advantage, educate ourselves about how not to be afraid of our own power, how not to be afraid of our buying power, our power in making policy. In fact, I believe that contrary to what some of the press would have you believe, it was actually the Latino community that delivered the change in this election. So we have to have faith in ourselves. We have to have that ability to unite. I really like the focus of this conversation. If this were happening in the United Nations, when Eva talks about we're not a monolithic community, we're not a monolithic community. So you could think about Momento Latino as a United Nations of Latinos and Latino organizations from across the country who recognize that we're different, but we're tied together by certain things: culture, by language, by history, by heritage, and quite honestly, by achievement, and in the future, by power.
Mm-hmm. I want to add to that, because we are, again, if this election proved anything, is that we're not a monolithic group. We do have diverse priorities and views representing all parts of the political spectrum, but that's not a weakness. That's a strength. You want diversity of ideas and innovation of ideas. So we bring a huge diversity of ideas and experiences to the table. So it's going to take that kind of thought leadership to solve the biggest challenges that we face as a community and as a country: recovering from COVID, rebuilding our economy, addressing climate change, systemic racism, children's education, so much. And so if we all want a safe and prosperous country and community where our children can succeed. And I think that even though if there's a debate about how to best get there, We have to be willing to listen and to compromise, but collectively fight for that vision. It's okay that we all have different paths to get there and we can debate it. But at the end of the day, we all want what's best for our community and for our country, because we have a tremendous amount of power when we work together. And I think, we have to run for office. We have to be on boards, and we have to be in corporate America, and we have to, we are the workforce of America. So as long as we all continue as a community to advocate together, then we have an opportunity to meaningfully shape America's future.
And what I really love, and that's why I was asking that question, what I really love about the name Momento Latino is because this is our Momento Latinos. Literally, we've never been so strong, we've never been so ready. The numbers have never been so, este arroz ya se coció, directo. O sea, this has never been such an incredible moment, thanks to leaders like you, Henry, working for decades, and Sid Wilson, Henry Cisneros, Sol Trujillo, all these people that have been putting blood and sweat, that took us all to be where we are, where we're so young, that this is our momento. So let's take it. But in order to take it, we need a plan. We need the marching orders, the one or two things that we will actually be following, and we need role models. And that's why I really appreciate, Eva, you putting so much of your time in advocacy, in supporting the community, in actually giving the not only the thoughtfulness, but the time to speak up and guide people. People will listen and will follow you. And Latinas, my daughter has no role models. Like 74% of every Latino in this country doesn't have a role model, because we don't have the, like the Bill Gates of the world, or we don't have so you are one. And so many people have to know how important that is, to see Latinas in boards, Latinas in corporate senior positions. To see us, perception is reality. And having the platform that you have, the position that you have, you're able to change perception much faster than many of us together. And so, talking about the museum, for example, we need to be able to see our heroes. Who is my son going to admire? Does he know Roberto Clemente? Does my daughter know Ellen Ochoa? Where are the children's books? Where is the museum? And so I want to talk a little bit about perception. I think that that's something that the three of us care tremendously about. And you're talking to an incredible amount of leaders today. And I hope that this conversation will just continue being that white paper that we can replicate again and again and again, to say, like, how are we going to change our perception? What are the things that you would say that all of us can do, so that all of us can be seen, heard, and valued? How do we become the last generation that is invisible? How do we open up the door for everyone, so that everyone of the next generation is fully seen, fully paid, fully valued?
Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you for the compliment. But I think the greatest myth is that you have to be rich or famous to make a difference, or you have to be a politician to be political. That is not the case. As Henry said, the first steps towards a movement is usually a disgruntled mom, an angry parent, a nurse who has faced injustice, a teacher who's tired of the system. Like, it's always been the everyday American who goes, enough, we've got to do something to change. And so I'm blessed and lucky that I have a platform and a voice, and I will continue to use it to shed light on the issues from the Latino community. But I think that people are motivated to leverage their power when they have information and when they're inspired. So when we bring their attention to a serious problem, people are actually ready and able to make a difference. And as far as the media, culture affects policy, absolutely. And there's no greater industry that affects culture than the media, right? Than Hollywood, than entertainment, than the news. And so, we have been a community, because of this last administration, that has been demonized and has been vilified. And we need to counter that narrative, and we need to be celebrating Latinx excellence. We need to be telling the truth about how we have shaped the past, the present, and the future of this country. And that's why Momento Latino and Hispanic Star, we're all coming at it from different angles, but we're taking direct action that will really impact our community in a sustainable and effective way. We have to correct the Latinx narrative in our communities and in the media, and inspire people to take pride in that heritage, take pride in the actions of their community. And I think we're doing a good job. We need to do better, but I'll continue to do my part here in the entertainment side, as a producer, as a director, and of course as an actor.
And just before Henry goes, yes, and I think that that's great. The African American Museum was great learning for me. I saw exactly how they constructed it. They said, we're going to change our image. And they started putting like the Afro look. And now we're going to go into fashion, and now into schools. And now we're going to go into the internet, and we're going to influence film and television and books and so on. There was a map. They had a map. And they said, like, these are the gaps. Who can actually influence what? Where do we need funding? And I think that that perception mapping for us is going to be crucial. So that's why I believe that there's a Momento Latino as a moment that we have to grab that opportunity to work together in, like in small groups and say, like, okay, who's got the radios? Who's got the magazines? How do we do this? Henry?
I agree with Eva. So I'm going to say that typically change in our country comes from the everyday hero. I mean, Rosa Parks refusing to step up her seat in that bus. Cesar Chavez, who said it was never about lettuce or grapes. I remember every time my mom would go to the grocery store, she would, if she wanted lettuce, she would make sure and demand to see in the back of the grocery store whether they were union products or not, right? Whether they were respectful of our migrant workers. And so I think what you're talking about, which I'm really interested in, is the development of not just a map, but a manifesto for our community, a strategic plan for our community that says, okay, in order for you to know where you came from, you have to preserve your history and heritage in this way. And here are the things that tie you together. No matter where you are on the spectrum, right? You have a connection to Spanish. There is music that ties us together. There's economic opportunity that ties us together. And maybe that's something that needs to be a part of this moment and a part of Momento Latino, because it won't be easy. I mean, there's incredible achievement and activism in our community, but we are different from each other geographically and ethnically. And we need to try and find a way, I think, to put together these covenants, this strategy of what is important to take place over the course of the next few years. In some ways, that's what our work has been about over the last 20 years or so. You need to have a national museum. You need to have historic sites. You need to have our leaders in policy making decisions. You need to have healthcare access. And I agree, one of the most important, she's way too modest, right? But one of the primary roles that Eva has taken, because she always allows the light that shines upon her to shine upon important objectives, is the role that we are not playing, making culture, making media, and being present in the media. I can't tell you how many times I've been frustrated to turn the TV, CNN or another network, any network, and have them talking about the Latino vote or the Latino community, and there's no Latinos on the air talking about it. So the only thing I would say is, I think it's time that we stop waiting for one person to lead us and lead ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we're all on that. And nevertheless, we do need, I am super excited about the possibilities. NASDAQ saying that they are going to just have all their companies have diverse on their boards or C-suite, unless they are not going to be part of NASDAQ, is giving us opportunity. A couple of days ago, the news about like African-American female small businesses have gotten more than $1 million in funding faster in the last 3 years. So there was an increase in that's the kind of thing we want to see. We want to see more C-suite. We want to see more people on boards. We want to see more investment in our small businesses, and we want to see more of us in leadership positions. And that's why perception matters. That's why if you can see it, you can be. That's why we have to be more in front of cameras, behind cameras, in the dialogues where we belong, where we're not portrayed as, like just like the loud or the criminal or the this. And that's why it's important that we collaborate. I think that the leader of our community is called unity.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And I think it's knowledge. What I find is that you walk into and Eva tells a great story, I'll let her tell it, but you walk into a boardroom and there's really anybody in there who understands who you are, where you came from. And when you don't have that knowledge, that's why this museum is so important, because we're an important part of the American story, but people don't know who we are. In some ways, we don't know who we are and our power. So I think that's a very important step, not just perception, but knowledge of our impact on this country and our impact on the future of this country.
So what's the story?
I don't know.
Tell the story about one of your mentors who told you need to walk out and walk back into that fear. You got to tell that. Tell that story.
When I was getting the job for Flaming Hot, because I'm going to direct the story of the Mexican janitor who created the most popular snack in the world, which is the Flaming Hot Cheeto. And so when I was trying to get that job, I was practicing my pitch, and I said I wanted to run it by one of my friends in the industry, and I started my pitch, and he goes, "Okay, stop." And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "I want you to walk out the door and come back in with your white male privilege pants on. Go put your white male privilege pants on and come back, and you assume you have the job. You tell them you have the job. You tell them what you're going to do. You don't ask them if they want you to do this. You tell them." And it literally was such a big aha moment for me, because as a woman and as a person of color, I was like, yeah, I guess I am asking for permission every time I enter a room. Will you give me the job? Can I have the job? Do I deserve the job? I hope you think I am good for the job. Instead of, assuming it is your job. It is your job. And I think we all need permission to be great. And that my friend gave me that permission. He goes, you can be, I allow you to be great. And so I've carried that through every room that I walk in now. Every Zoom that I walk in is having
your white male pants. There you go.
White male
pants. That's right, because what's underlying there is exactly what you're talking about, Claudia, which is we have not been the tastemakers. We have not been the board members. Right. And so, or the gatekeeper. So now, right, when you act like you belong there and people have knowledge of who you are, like of Eva Longoria's ability. I've seen her at work, not just as an actress, but as a producer, as a director, as a philanthropist, as a person who holds a master's degree. When you let them know who you really are, then you become a tastemaker and you get appointed to a board. And that's the next step.
I wish everybody will drink the Kool-Aid. They will drink the Kool-Aid of our power. And I would be very happy, I think, that if we could achieve everyone not only wearing the white male privileged trousers, but actually knowing that the Hispanic trousers represent even more power than that, because we're the growth, the driving force. Mm-hmm. I want to, I just want to ask you whether you would like, you have here a number of people that are really resource allocators, decision makers, companies, non-for-profit organizations, media companies listening to this conversation. I know that you have ambition goals. I know that we can do them. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this session talking about change and optimism and unity and hope for our community. What can people do? What would you like? What would be your dream come true if people would do it? What is a call to action for everyone, decision makers listening to this session? You
go first, Eva.
Well, I think to any corporate leaders who are watching this, invest in the work of community-led work and make significant financial investments to address centuries of systemic inequality. It might not make business sense for you. But it is the right thing to do. I always say in my industry too, when I develop a TV show or a movie with a Latinx story or Latinos as actors, I always ask the community, you have to support this. I don't care if you don't like sci-fi. I don't care if you don't like comedy. It is your job as the community to support this work so that we can continue to make more work. And so to any corporate leader, there are so many national nonprofits and grassroots leaders who've developed innovative strategies for the wisdom of their lived and professional experience. So it oftentimes does make business sense for you. And to any individuals watching who want to help, our community is facing a lot of challenges. Don't be overwhelmed by the enormity of the problem. So many people go, world hunger. Well, I can't affect world hunger. I'm just me. Climate change. I can't affect climate change. I'm just me. You don't be intimidated into inaction. There's so many things you can do. So many. Obviously, if you want to donate your time or money to a nonprofit, that's fine. Choose an issue that's important to you. Follow educational, reputable accounts on social media, share their information, register Latinx voters, go to work in your community. You don't have to look far to see somebody who needs help, but everybody can do something small and meaningful that matters to you. And that makes us all take a collective step forward to equality.
I don't even know where to begin. I mean, we'll have to raise hundreds of millions of dollars to build that National Latino Museum, the Smithsonian American Latino Museum on the Mall in Washington, D.C., which will be connected to institutions across this country, such an important platform for the education of our Latino youth in the future. That's something that the corporate community definitely needs to be a part of and that we need to support ourselves. I'd also say, I think for me, it would be a short-term request for unity. I think that in order to move the Latino community, which has been disproportionately affected by COVID, in these three areas, the virus, healthcare, jobs, our economy, our small businesses, our educational opportunity, not to let our young people slip backwards, that we're going to have to work together in a unified fashion in order to make sure that our people get vaccinated. Because I think underlying all of this is this message that what is good for the Latino community is good for the United States of America. What's good for the Latino community is good for the American economy. What's good for the Latino community is good for the health of the United States. You cannot separate us from the rest of the country. And we're coming out, we are emerging from a moment where people wanted us to believe that we're separate, and we are not, because what is in the best interest of our institutions and our businesses is for us to be united as one people.
Wow, that's why when Eva follows you, you're amazing, Henry. That's so inspirational. My goodness. And listen, my call to action to you both and to all of us is let's together rebrand our community. Let's turn it around. If the Hispanic Star is something that can help us elevate, like the rainbow for the LGBTQ, like the Olympic rings for the rings for the Olympics, let's brand ourselves. Let's have Hispanic Heritage Month full of the Hispanic Star in the windows, in the t-shirts, in the talking points of people. That would be my dream. I'm dreaming of a place in which people can't see us, but anything what's like stars. So I want to thank Henry and Eva for this participation. Any final word particularly for the young people that could be exposed to this session?
Oh God, I hate final words because I feel like I always have so much to say.
Final words.
So much to say. But I will say, look, we have tremendous power when we work together, and when we're civically engaged, when we advocate on behalf of our communities, when we run for office. At the end of the day, there's more that unites us than divides us. Y somos más fuertes unidos. And I think that we have to focus on that. We are more alike than we are different, not only as Hispanics, but as Americans. And so lean into that. Don't be scared of that, and show up in ways for your community.
Bravo.
I want to speak to the young people. I want to tell you that over the course of my life, I have had people who are willing to share their experience and their knowledge with me. And if I hadn't had them, I wouldn't be who I am today. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for a mentor. Don't be afraid to embrace your own power. If you don't do it, if you don't show up, you never achieve. And so I think that this is a very important moment for our community, but the most important moment for young people in our community. And you are the future of this country if you recognize that the future of the country is in your hands.
Wow. Eva Longoria, Henry Muñoz, founders of Momento Latino, thank you so much for closing the Hispanic Leadership Summit and leaving us with a message of unity and hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.